This call is now being recorded.
Hi, Evan. How are you?
I am so well. How are you, Mr. Reno?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you so much for calling in and helping me with Reno's Regions. This week we're doing artistry.
Oh, you're so kind, to offer me a chance to speak. As well, I wanted to thank you for being so accommodating with my schedule. I apologize deeply for all the weird time changes that have happened over the last 45 minutes, but I really appreciate you being so accommodating, very kind. I'm happy to be, flattered to be asked, and happy to have a conversation with you.
Of course. I mean, I have to be accommodating. I know how hard and how busy it is to be an artist such as yourself. I mean, you have a big a big record that just came out, and I'm sure you're getting lots of radio play and lots of interviews. I'm just thankful to have 30 minutes of your time.
You're very sweet to be so praiseworthy. But fortunately, my schedule is pretty open today. I'm doing all my press work tomorrow, so.
Yeah, I saw that little snippet with Matt Lauer that you're about to do.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, he's trying to get back onto the circuit, but I'm not really going to give him a good time tomorrow. It's going to be hard.
I want to know how you came up with the name Steven Leftovers.
Sure. So one day I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw a fun prompt to make your CIA name from a humorous shared image. You would do so by combining your middle name with the last food item you ate. And my middle name is Steven, and I came upon this Facebook post around Thanksgiving.
Perfect.
So we had plenty of leftovers in the fridge, which I had for my meal. I think it was a lunch meal that day. So, yep, that's how it was birthed.
That's an excellent story.
You're sweet to say. I had been bouncing around with a mixture of different project names for a few years before I settled into Steven Leftovers, and I have had no regrets. It is the most comfortable name that I have come up with, and I didn't even really come up with it. It was the source material of this great Facebook post.
Now, Evan, I was curious, how did you come up with the name Ectoplasm? What was the idea or the concept behind that?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I name my music or my records, more specifically, because sometimes the songs that I write have titles that refer to the lyrics of the songs.
Of course.
But when I name the records, there's not really much of a defining characteristic to them that can be expanded upon through the material of the record. It's usually just fun names or phrases that I really like and I think sound cool for a whole record or a whole collection of songs. So to be completely honest, there's no real immediate significance to Ectoplasm. I think if I were to try and hazard a theory to string together the songs in the album through some conjoining theme, it would be in ectoplasmic material. There is much variety in an interesting spin of organisms and bacteriae and small species that may come together to form this fun, lifelike goo. And maybe the songs on the record are all these different little species that can be identified in the ectoplasm. But
as lifelike glue.
Yes, like glue. But I don't really stand behind that. So that's perhaps just something to hold on to. But to answer your very good question, there is no real theme to the record that's spread through the name of the record.
Okay. Is there a theme in general for the record? It seems to be, for me, that this record was more of a showcase of how well or how far, I should say, you've progressed as an artist and as a musician. Because from this record to your previous work is a total change, at least for me. There's I can still hear the foundation of who you are as an artist, but I can still hear the growth as well.
No, that's a good question. First off, you're very kind to provide such compliments of my music. Thank you as well for listening to it. Thanks even for asking me to do this. It's very sweet of you to inquire, and I always enjoy getting the chance to talk with you. You have such excellent questions. You have keen ear, keen mind for conversation.
Thank you.
Never a dull moment. But to answer your question, there wasn't really much of a theme to the songs on this record. There was definitely good mixture of experimentation. There was a good mixture of experiments performed on the record. Songs
with reverb, right?
Yes, that one definitely. Lots of reverb on that one. I had, for like maybe a 30-minute period, I thought about adding subtitles to every track to name each song as a different sort of study technique or a mastering or mixing element. So, for instance, I thought to name Thumb Goes Down. I thought to add a subtitle, Whistling Study, because there is a little whistling portion at the end there. And
I was wondering why you had track 9 like that.
Yes, that's true. That is why the Cold-Blooded Old Times cover got that subtitle. I eventually scrapped them all and just kept the one for the cover. There was definitely more of a theme to my last record called Mercury Nickels and Buffalo Pennies. I
was going to ask you about the inspirations for this record. I was curious if the Dave Matthews scatting, Madlib, or A Tribe Called Quest, if any of them were inspirations of sorts for this record.
That is a very eclectic mixture. Honored to be named among such greats, and in particular among such great vocal techniques of the inimitable Dave Matthews. Yeah, those definitely were artists that were circling around my listening habits when recording this. Those were sort of artists. Madlib and A Tribe Called Quest, namely, are artists that I listen to pretty much all the time.
Really?
I think Madlib's experimental music instrumental music. So the Quasimodo tracks, definitely are great, but I really, in particular, I love his Blue Note Records catalog remix album called Shades of Blue, where he takes songs by Blue Note Records artists, and makes excellent instrumental beats. There's a song on there actually with MF Doom too. Some amazing instrumental tracks on that record. He, in fact, at one point, I think it's the song, it's not the song Distant Land, I think it's the song after that, but in that song, whatever that song is called, he samples the bass line from Electric Relaxation. They take the same sample from a Blue Note song, but that record is great. Tribe Called Quest is excellent, always very good. I think for this record, I was listening to a lot of Mog. I wanted to put one of his songs on the record, which was fun.
I've listened to them a lot too recently. They're excellent.
Yeah, Smog is great. Bill Callahan, he lives in Austin. Did you know that?
I did not know Bill Callahan lives in Austin. I've been listening to more of him too because of Abby. Yeah,
he's the mastermind behind Smog, and then he does his solo stuff too. But Smog is sort of it was a big project of his in the 90s, and then moving on into the 21st century, he started doing work under the Bill Callahan name. But he lives in Austin. Yeah, he's a legend. He's great. His music is excellent. Lots of his stuff. Some Texas punk, too. I listen to a lot of bands from Austin from the 70s and 80s, like the Big Boys and Really Red and the Dicks, Nerve Breakers, the Hickoids. Very good band.
Evan, where was this recorded, this album? Was it recorded at AT&T JA45KIZ, or was it at the Stackhouse or Trevor's Ankles?
That's a good question. We still have that modem at the house. Still the AT&T one is still a long modem name, but the record was recorded at my house. I did it all here. My house in Dallas, Texas. I record pretty much everything I do in a small room in my house. The acoustics there are pretty good. It's got a nice window and it's got plenty of room for musical equipment. So it's not necessarily a small room, but it is rather compact. But that is where I do all my work.
Has moving back home shaped your approach to music and in life in general?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think definitely. I think because when I would write music while living in Austin, it was only music that I could envision being reinterpreted in an actual recorded format. The only sounds I had to grab onto were those that I could make from my acoustic guitar and whatever I had on my laptop, or whatever musical sounds I could whip up just an apartment or something. Yes, definitely. I think it allowed me more of a window. Moving back home has allowed me more of a window to experiment with recording techniques and songwriting techniques.
It's so weird, Evan. How many shows did you have on air? Like actually on FM air?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably 5 or so.
Wow.
I think, let's see, I did one show called Motel Bottle Rocket.
Motel Bottle Rocket. Hell yeah.
I did another show called Moon House. I did one show called Angel Dust Kiss Ass. Harold and I did One Perfect Song. I don't know one other that I'm maybe not thinking about, but and I did one called Future Brother as well.
That's right.
Yeah, so
you're blessed, Evan, because the first time I'm on air, and it is so fun to get in my truck and drive around and listen to me talk.
Right.
like this, I have such a high hubris. Like I could care less what's due in an hour or who's calling me or anything. I drop everything, get in my truck and go drive around. And then I have my windows down, music loud, and whoever's near me, I go, "That's me! I'm on the radio!"
And I turn to you and go, "Oh my gosh, it's you!" How have you had to reinterpret the idea of a region in this new format of broadcasting?
So excellent question, Evan. I remember when we came up with the idea for the show. Well, when I had the idea for the show and I came over to go running with you, and I pitched you the idea, and I said, I want to do a show that's so general that I can do whatever I want, but still be a specialty show. The region is a specialty, and so for today, I asked you a question of where was this recorded. So the region is Dallas, Texas.
That's true. No, you're right.
So this week, Evan, I'm doing jobs because I have retired from my job. Right. Now I'm unemployed and I'm thinking about what's next, what my next job is, and I've been asking people about what their favorite job is, and I'll be talking about jobs in general. And so I've been asking people where they work. So the region is Amazon or Marinelli's restaurant in Dallas, Texas, or KVRX was one. I got Ariel to talk about being station manager.
Yeah.
So things like that.
Yeah. So then the idea of a job or the workplace becomes a region to explore as a story and as a narrative. That's interesting. So then do you define the regions based on abstract categories, an area of work or an area of that's cool. That's really cool.
So this would be this week is going to be the workplace.
Right. That's cool. That's really
Last
cool.
week was libraries, and I had people talk about their favorite books and where they've read and libraries and bookstores. And it's really interesting to hear people talk about them getting in trouble in school for reading books. And it's I never thought of that.
That's true. If you're reading a book that you maybe shouldn't be, or if you're reading a book that, while a teacher's trying to talk or something, then perhaps that could be construed as, well, and then too, even the idea of a library is so abstract on its own. You could call the collection of books that are in your home, a library, and people could come
exactly
pick books out and take them home and bring them back. It's interesting. it does give you
And
a
some
lot to
people,
expand.
yeah, a lot to expand on. As some people were talking about in the recordings, they're like, as I talk to you, I'm looking at my bookshelf of my own personal library. And it's like, it's such an interesting idea that regions are moving away, because I got so sick of talking about states and countries. Not that those are not interesting, but there's more. There's more to life than just, oh, Evan's from Texas, so we'll talk about Texas. It's such a big region. I wanted to make it a specialty of, like you recorded your show at home. It's home-like.
Right. That's true. No, you're right. That's a good point.
Like when you were making good times that I had, what was dinner? Like, what did you have for dinner that day?
That's a good question.
What was the mindset? What was the mood of that record?
Oh man, I don't know I don't remember what I had for dinner that night. I do remember writing the song. I remember that it sort of came to me very quickly, and the first thing I thought about was maybe it's like a pre-chorus. I don't know exactly how you define it, but the section of the song that goes, I often think that I wasted life by making people sad. I think those lines came to me first, and then I wrote the rest of the song around it. And I had been really trying to, I think what I really wanted when I came upon those lines was I wanted to put them into a song in a way that gave them the opportunity to shine, to kind of hold it together. I think having them in a verse position might have removed it might have worn away at their sheen, at their luster, because you hear them so many times. But I think as well too, it allowed me to expand upon the idea that I do often think that I wasted my life by making people sad, but that especially in the context of relationships, that even the tough moments, I'm fortunate to have been able to crop them out of larger periods that are mostly nice, that are mostly good. That's an interesting thing to think about, like reminiscing on someone that you no longer can maybe talk to in the same way that you once could through these memories that, are of a time when you two were in such a different universe. I don't remember what I had for dinner that night. That's a great question. I'll have to go back and think.
That's the pointed way of saying how we talk to one another or how we communicate with people. There's a lot behind every word and every action you say, because like they say that most of what we understand from people is via body language and tone, not really the words. And that's one thing I think about a lot of when I talk to people, especially on the phone, is there's when I say hello to you, Evan, there's 4 years of hellos behind that one word. And so just thinking about how my words and actions affect people, especially with how much experience or how much time I have with someone, how that changes the dynamic with them.
Oh yeah, all the different experiences,
because you can't get those memories back. So that's one reason why I connect so well with that song, because I too think about, I've spent a lot of my time making people sad, and I wish not to, but that's just the nature of the beast. That's just how it happens sometimes.
That's true.
It's the part of growing up.
Yeah, you're right. You're sweet to say. It's something that you can't really avoid when you grow into the phase of your life in which you have relationships or you meet people, or you develop friendships or bonds that are as high risk, high reward as those are that you experience when you're an adult. They can't be simplified any further, that when it comes down to it, it is inevitable that something like that may arise, and that's just, that you have to accept that inevitability, that chance that it is inevitable. It's the nature of the relationships we have with people when we're growing up, and it's a sort of trade-off, because the relationships we have, they come in this form that, can often enrich our lives in this way that we never before have experienced. And so in some ways it's sort of the price you pay for allowing them to benefit you so profoundly, that they may also hurt you so profoundly. But it is nonetheless still tough.
Going back and I guess emphasizing what we're talking about, the weight of words, I was wondering how long does it take to do the writing of songs? As you alluded to, sometimes they just come to you, but, you know, when you say, you know, that something falls on your stomach like a piece of pizza, you know, how does that come about?
That's a good question. I think it definitely changes from song to song. And so I don't know if I have a very clearly outlined writing process to which I adhere for every song I write. But I do find that I, more often than not, give myself the opportunity to see an idea all the way through before I decide whether or not I want to pursue it any further. Sometimes that means that I write the whole song before my eyes, which is a really cool experience. And that only happens when you are so creatively empowered that you have to set aside everything you're doing at that moment and just let the song kind of write itself through you, which is a really cool experience. And so infrequently does it arise. I sort of work with small ideas and I record like so much of what I write that I think sounds deep. Admittedly, though, a lot of it I don't come back to. It just stays in my phone in little 3-second snippets because the ones that I do latch on to are the ones that I don't need to record. Those are the ones that I can't get out of my head or I keep playing and they linger and eventually I maybe can work something out from them. I think it's a process that you can't really, in some ways you can't define, but in other ways you have to define it in order to give yourself the opportunity to understand the art that you're trying to make, because that can get kind of confusing sometimes. At least the art that I am trying to make, it's a style that I have come to understand more about over the last few years that for a while I didn't fully understand, and now I think that I have a pretty good grasp on what kind of art I want to make. And then the next part is making that kind of art, which is sometimes easy to do, you know, if something really comes to you, if you're really taken by an idea, and other times it's not. At least for music, I come upon sounds often from just playing on the instruments. Sometimes I hear something and then I can sort of interpolate it on an instrument. So like if I hear something in my head or a rhythm or something, then I can think, oh, like this is what it would sound like if I played it on this instrument, and then I can play it and hear, oh, is this actually something that I want to follow through with? And it sometimes isn't, and it sometimes is. All the songs on this record were songs that I sort of solid periods of meddling, but it was never. I don't think I really ironed out a song over a long period of time. All of these songs I sort of wrote and then explored and saw where they went. And there were plenty of songs too. I think on this record, especially, many songs that I wrote that I didn't, and recorded that I didn't end up putting on the record. That were all ideas that I tried to see through, but I just didn't, they didn't wind up sounding like I wanted them to sound. And that does happen sometimes, but on other records, it's usually like one or two songs, maybe. But on this one, it was probably 5 or 6 different songs that I recorded. And so I think maybe this time around, I gave myself a better opportunity to really explore what I could write. I think to answer your question, which is a very good question, it is just, it's a different process for every song. But I think on this record, the songs were all given a good amount of real estate to breathe.
I like
it. Thanks. And if they were enjoying being around, then I think that was a sign that I had something that I could really work with.
So you said 2 things, Evan, I wanted to go back on. You were talking about developing your understanding of the kind of artist you want to be and what kind of art you want to do. I was wondering if you could further elaborate on how you came to develop that understanding, and I guess more of like, how do you define yourself as an artist?
2 very good questions. I think the first one, how I came to define myself in the way that I have, was really through understanding that the only person who can make your art is you. And it's not you necessarily making art for someone else or aspiring to make some kind of art, but it's just the art that you are able to conjure up. And sometimes that seems like the art maybe that you don't think you're able to conjure up, or the art maybe that sometimes you don't want to conjure up. And that's why you have to keep working to find a middle ground between the art that you maybe have in mind that you want to make and the art that you actually make. I don't think that an artist should torture themselves by making music that they know they can make but not really enjoying making just for the sake of making the music. I think you have to really pace yourself and to try and figure out more about how you like making your music, the music that you can make, the music that comes out of you. That's a very complicated process, but that took me a while. And I think to answer your second question, the music that I make, the way I would sort of define myself as an artist, is I think best explained as would simply seem by taking all of the bands and the songs that have really influenced me and smushing them together to make one coagulated mass of artists and influences. So I think definitely I really resonate heavily with Madlib and the Tribe Called Quest and lots of hip hop. Souls of Mischief on the West Coast, ODB on the East Coast, Houston rappers too, Mike Jones. Big Mo, absolutely. City of Syrup. As well, though, I really resonate with lots of folk and indie rock. Sparkle Horse and Beck, Fiona Apple, and
Prefab Sprouts, right?
Prefab Sprout is very good. I'm maybe not the biggest fan of their music as compared to Aaron or Grant Hardaway or Zach Evans. Those guys have some nuts for Prefab Sprout. But I really like Towns Van Sant is really great. Christelle Beaufell, fantastic folk artist from Austin. She's excellent. She's signed to a label called Father Daughter Records. Her music is great. Lots of Dallas artists too. I have really good friends who make great music down here. Future Nest, Reynolds Flow, China Club, Dolphin Records, Lord Byron, Live. Yeah, I think it just sort of comes to play as I would define my listening habits. Because I think at the end of the day, that's the sort of theory behind a lot of art making is that there's that like Stravinsky quote or someone said it and it's been paraphrased a million times over, but the idea that a great artist doesn't imitate, but they steal. Art comes from, taking influences that have also done that same thing before themselves. And with records like Shades of Blue or with Low End Theory or Midnight Marauders, the act of sampling is, it is one of the purest, cleanest acts of musical or creative theft. But to me, it makes, I think some of my all-time favorite records feature lots of interesting usages of samples. But I think it's just kind of what you grow up on and how you come to find your listening patterns, what you find on your Spotify year-end list. So, lots of stuff like that. Yeah. You asked a very good question. I don't really know a better way to define my artist personality. I think that's probably a pretty good way to do it.
Well, you did an excellent job, Evan. I was just going to hammer it down just a little bit more. You left some loose ends to my viewpoint. Because I wanted to know, Evan, you listed off a lot of hip-hop artists and a lot of folk artists as your main sources of inspiration or as stealing from, right?
Right.
And I wanted to know, how do you merge hip-hop and folk? How do you interpret those two to make your art? Because that's one thing that does come across a bit, but how do you eat or how do you digest it and turn it into your music?
That's a really good question. I don't really know. I think it's more of that genetic code, and understanding how that music, what elements of it make it that style, and then figuring out a way in which that style you could work it into your music if it's a style or a characteristic of a song that really, that really works with you. It's maybe a way in which drums are played or, the sound of an electric guitar or something like that. I really like, one band that I really, really like that has stuck with me for a while is Parquet Courts. And I will often listen to their music and think, man, it would be really cool to write a song like this. But I realize that I am not the same songwriter as the person who writes the songs in Parquet Courts. And I write my songs in a different way than they do. However, I've listened to their music and it has struck such a chord with me that I've found certain elements of their music that I've been able to appropriate to mine in a really natural and easygoing way. So to answer your question, which is a really good one, I think it's about getting comfortable with the genres that maybe you want to blend. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you make a goal of, I'm going to make a record that sounds like these two genres, so you listen to them
of course.
a million times over, and it's not like studying for a test. I think it's the genres that kind of speak to you, the styles of music that really touch your heart.
Your soul.
The ones, yes, that's it. Exactly. The ones that go deep in your soul and that really, they echo in your body. Those genres, those sounds, those artists, those songs, those are the ones that you will want to, to add to your music or to your style in a way. And that ends up producing, music that is different for everyone. Definitely it's rooted in the styles that one person holds near and dear to their artistic identity. So
if I had a musical artist that was my subconscious, it'd be Action Bronson. Because in high school, I would listen to him a lot, and just the way he would paint scenes and use imagery is something that I really gravitated towards. Him and Wale, two artists that use wordplay, to me, exceptionally. My roommate has never listened to Action Bronson in depth, and recently he's been listening to him every day for all day for about a month. And then he looked at me and he goes, Reno, I finally understand why you make music the way you do. And I go, see, he goes, you were influenced by him because you could hear it in my writing, the way, because I wasn't trying to copy him, but just the way he would, I guess, structure his verses and the way he would say stuff, I would try to use. And I've had many, many friends. Evan, I'll embarrass myself. I remember being in my college library, sitting down and talking to a friend, and we're just talking about whatever, right? And my other friend, Jack, comes up to me and starts going, sticky, stiffy glue makes me feel pretty powder blue. What's the truth? What's the chartreuse makes my cheek have hints of roost? Or something like that. I need more glue than Elmer's in a vacuum. Sticky, sniffy glue, something like that. And I remember just like looking at him and laughing, but also kind of like, wow, he listened to my record.
Right. Yeah.
He thinks my record's at least funny. He's not, I'm not going to make the Billboard charts. But I just remember thinking, that validated me a bit.
Yeah, that he listened to your music and then he came back with it, that it stuck in his head. Yeah, it's you made songs that really resonated with him.
Do you have any friends that have come up to you and like recited some of your lyrics to you and caught you off guard?
A couple times it's happened. Sometimes it's maybe gestures too. I had a friend once talking about something and they managed to work in the gesture of moving a thumb down, and I kind of I wasn't sure if they were referring to my song. With a couple other people too, it's been brought up. But yeah, no, it is a really nice feeling. It's interesting to know that that your art is making its way to people, and not to say like necessarily I don't mean for that to sound like a real pretentious kind of of course. But it's just the idea that your art is being heard by other people, that someone else with ears totally unrelated to your, unaffiliated with any of your history or your ideas, is hearing the work that you've spent so much time on and then capturing it in their own special way. And that's a really cool thing. Then you get, someone's unique interpretation of your music which, that ends up being their own interpretation.
And their own interpretation of you.
Oh, you're right. Yes. Yeah. Oh, well, and thinking about the example of your friend in the library, that's, he heard those words that you came up with and you wrote down, and maybe have somewhere in a journal or on your laptop or something, or maybe you wrote them on your hand and then you washed them off afterwards. But they still were words that came out to you in a certain form, in a certain structure, and then were transmitted to your friend. And then he picked them up and gave them back to you in another way that, that sort of gave nod to your source material. But it is just interesting to think about that art travels around like that.
Yeah, with the influence of working with that band that you played with when I saw you last had on you as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
Working as a solo act to now working in another band, going from bands to solo artists to back to a band.
That's a good question. Yeah, so that band, it's always been fun to play with that band. Lounge, to be specific. Right? Is that the band you're referring to? That Porch Fire show, right?
Yes, when I saw you, yeah. That was the last time I saw you.
Right. That's right, that's true. Gosh, what a crazy few months it's been. That band's songs, specifically the songs we were playing at that time, those songs were more geared towards the creative work of the singer-songwriter of that band. His name is Thomas Waddell. The songs that we were playing then were songs that had come from his work in months and weeks prior. And I think we were trying to get ironed down a process by which we could collaborate and create new songs, but we were trying to just play some and get our name out. It's always fun to play drums. I think definitely there's a certain knowledge that I take with me from my drum playing and playing in a band in that kind of role that I can then apply to making my own music and then playing in my project in a different role. I think it helps definitely to have lots of different perspectives on performance and the different roles that people play in a in an ensemble like that. That's a good question. I would say just that I think it gives me a better flow of different instruments in the track, and what each instrument is capable of doing, to perform their own unique part in the in the greater mixture of artists and sounds in the song.
Thank you.
When you said I only have two more questions, I said, "Oh, you're good." I didn't mean for that to sound like, "Oh, good," like that it was.
I understand.
Oh, good. Was not.
Finally, I'm sick of hearing this guy's voice and his stupid questions. I was going to say, do you have any advice for artists that are wanting to be artists or people that are still just looking to become artists?
I think however you're able to, and that definitely changes form from person to person. I am very fortunate enough to be in a position in life that allows me the freedom to pursue this in this way and to utilize resources. But however you're able to, do it. I think the Austin, Texas punk band, the Big Boys, technically they're just called Big Boys. They were one of the most important punk bands in the 70s and 80s in Austin. They were a very important punk band in the queer punk community and the skate punk community. But generally speaking, they embodied the punk spirit, spreading music and culture around to as many people as they could in an area. And at the end of every show they played, they would say, "Now go start a band on your own." And I think that is true. You just have to do it. And it's really tough sometimes, and sometimes it gets really anxiety inducing and nerve wracking. Everyone has a creative voice. If you're interested in sending it outward, I would say just do it. Don't let anything hold you back.
And do you have anything else you'd like to add that you think we forgot to talk about or didn't emphasize enough?
Oh gosh, no, that I'm very fortunate to not only have the opportunity to do this, but to have the opportunity to pursue my creative voice. And I'm very thankful for all the people in my life who have taught me and helped me grow and learn from creative perspective, and especially the people who listen to my music and support my music. It's a really really endearing thing. Yeah, I just appreciate having had the opportunity to do this.